are these people?
1,000 for this year, but a 35% increase. We'll extrapolate. I have some numbers to go over later, but it's scary how fast this could accelerate. Canada has seen another record-busting year of euthanasia deaths, with 35% rise for some 13,500 state-sanctioned suicides in 2022. An analysis of official data shows Canada's health chiefs won't release their formal tally for some weeks, but data from Ontario, Alberta, Quebec, and Nova Scotia already shows steep rises. Based on those numbers, the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, a campaign group, assessed that medical assistance in dying cases rose from 10,064 in 2021 to about 13,500 in 2022.
That's crazy.
That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, no, from what I understand, it's always been like MAID has existed, but not for mental health. But like it's just
and you can if you have the notes, you can see in there. Or I can actually. So I'll just send you this actually. So here's the kind of background on this, but they only added in March this year. They extended it basically for making mental health a primary condition. Okay. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because there's a video that goes into a lot of good stuff about this. But the really concerning thing about them adding mental health into it is that about 40% of the people in poverty have a mental health condition in Canada. Okay, so you're ostensibly creating a law that perpetuates the murder of people because they're in poverty. So you should see, let's see, and scroll down a little bit more.
It's also just like inhumane as hell.
It's incredibly inhumane. So on February 2nd, 2023, the government of Canada introduced a Bill C-39 to extend the temporary exclusion of eligibility in circumstances where a person's sole underlying medical condition is mental illness for a period of 1 year until 2024. And then again, they extended it again.
Everyone.
So they keep extending it.
That's everyone.
Yeah. So mental health condition. Okay, but that's not really. Yes, that's a problem. Okay, that's a problem in itself, because the last thing you want to do is have a system where it's like, oh, this guy's depressed, we can like prod him a little bit and get them to kind of like be open to the idea of killing themselves. That's not healthcare, that's death care. So it's very concerning.
And not just that, they're advertising this as if it's like, and we'll show later, but like they're advertising this as if it's like, oh, just come and kill yourself. You've got that car loan payment coming up. Just take part of the MAID program.
It's really sad. And the other thing, we could probably go into the next article to tell us one. And then, but basically, the really kind of nefarious thing here is the poverty aspect, because the mental health condition clause is basically a smokescreen. Because, and I broke down some numbers I'll get into later, towards the end of this, but the idea that they're adding the clause to include mental health as a primary condition is basically a smokescreen to allow them to admit people who are too poor to survive in Canada. Okay, because mental illness is so prevalent among poor people. So it's really messed up. So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration has expressed support for the medical assistance in dying program being expanded to people suffering from irredeemable mental illness. The implications of this option, however, have raised ethical concerns. In 2016, a bill approving C-14, a law permitting medical euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide, the Parliament ruled that the Canadian state shall cover the cost of euthanasia for people who suffer terminal illness with foreseeable natural death and who are too poor to afford this procedure. And then March 2021, legislators repealed the reasonably foreseeable requirement and the provision specifying that the patient's condition should be terminal. Oh, so I misquoted myself. So it used to have to have a terminal condition. You used to have to have a terminal condition, like terminal.
Now you don't.
Now you don't.
Now you just need to have you need to be depressed for a year, and then you're legally allowed to have a doctor just put you down, take you right back out in the backyard with a shotgun, and that's it.
I mean, it's not quite like that, but yeah, I mean, that's basically
obviously speech.
I mean, maybe like they should let them choose how they want to go out.
Justin Trudeau's Holocaust.
That's actually a funny tweet. Since we're here, because you're doing the screen sharing, you can show that tweet really quick. I was going to show it. But here's another kind of nefarious thing that they say they're doing it for care, but it's explicitly stating, and she's invoking Hitler, which is kind of you can make it for yourselves if you think it's hyperbolic or not. But it's basically showing that they actually did the math and determined that killing off their population every year through this MAID program was cost effective to the system. So that yeah, it's so messed up, so messed up. So they actually were like, you know what, we're saving, what does it say, like $87 million a year, killing these people. We're doing something right. Like, congratulations. So go back to the other picture really quick. I think they were like, what was it? Just like something about, I can't read German, but this is it looks like something.
It looks like accounting of something.
Yeah, some accounting, but it's basically like, you can kind of see it as like a eugenics program.
That is what it is, and you don't think this is not coming to the United States? You think this is just not coming to?
Oh, it'll come to the United States.
You think this is just happening in Canada? This is coming.
No. So this is in.
There's other countries.
Yeah. And let's pull up the global news because we'll get into that video because the video is really fucking good actually. But this is in a bunch of countries. Well, not a bunch, but there's a few countries that this is in, and the key thing to kind of keep in mind is that Canada has one of the easiest systems to put you to death and one of the lowest standards of care for healthcare. So when you take really shitty healthcare, even though it's socialized,
it's free but it's shitty.
It's free but shitty with a very high rate of accepting people into the program. You're creating a program that's kind of like conflicting against itself because they should be wanting to help people as much as possible. And they're not because they have a shitty system. And then you see that they have money that they're saving and they did the math on it. It just doesn't seem like they're much doing it to help people out, but more to cull the herd and save some money. So with this one, let's just watch the movie because there's a lot of really salient points in it, and I think they do a good job kind of going over some of the key points that I want to go through anyway.
Is it in the article?
Yeah, the video's at the top. Yeah, it's that guy. There you
go. She is.
Hello, you've reached the Provincial Health Services Authority telephone line for medical assistance in dying.
The countdown to Joni Cowie's death has begun.
If you call the number on the government website, they will provide doctors that will sign off for you.
Like many disabled Canadians, she is stuck in a cycle of poverty and despair.
There's no hope for anybody in Ontario. That's a good boy.
This is like really sad video.
To end her life with the government's help.
They could have me dead in.
Yeah, if there's any trigger warnings,
it's pretty sad, but it's important.
That's what I was told.
And like in my
90
case,
days.
The problem is not really the disability; it is the poverty.
Les Landry is in the same position, wanting to live, but seeing no other option than death.
These two are for my asthma. This is for my COPD. Since when did we stop looking at the value of human life in this country?
It's a question people with disabilities and their advocates ask constantly.
We can organize medical assistance in dying in approximately 2 weeks in a very organized and efficient manner. Yet, it is so difficult to get my patients the social support that they need to live well. That is morally distressing.
So that's what I was saying.
From her home in Windsor, Ontario,
they have a shitty healthcare
deals
system,
with the grinding financial pain of living in poverty during an affordability crisis, compounded by the physical pain of disability.
I have severe asthma that's turned into COPD and Guillain-Barré syndrome, as well as cancer. I also just recently fractured my back. I'm tired a lot. The pain is excruciating.
Hey, Toby.
No,
Joni lives with her 3 dogs and her daughter, who is also disabled. They have no family support, so they have to find a way to survive on $1,228 a month Joni gets from Ontario's Disability Support Program, plus a few $100 more for her daughter. Even with subsidized housing, it's not nearly enough.
We have about $59 left to buy groceries in a month because our home, we have to have housing insurance, rent, hydro is high, gas is high. I get angry at people who say you need to budget better because I just want to say to them, go to hell. I really do. And I don't swear very often.
Here's the thing. Joni's financial struggle is not at all unique. During the pandemic, the government decided working Canadians needed at least $2,000 a month to live, while the disabled were forced to get by on much less.
They had served, but not for people with disabilities. People with disabilities have been put on the back burner and nobody gives a damn about them.
Disability supports vary from province to province. On the low end, imagine surviving on $705 a month, as people with disabilities do in New Brunswick. Or how about living on $1,358 a month in Vancouver, where the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,500. The most recent numbers from Statistics Canada.
By the way, it's way worse in the United States.
Play a little bit more, and we're gonna. I'll pause it for a second.
41% of Canadians living under the poverty line have a disability.
All right, that's good. Pause it for a second.
1.5 million people.
So 1.5 million people are under the poverty line. Okay, and you heard them just say that lady gets $1,200 a month to live on something that, like, just to live there costs more than that. And then she said before that, like, people who are disabled were not getting stimulus during the pandemic. Okay, so you have this, like, cascading series of, like, multiple things that Canada is doing to basically kill off poor people, kill off disabled people. This is the thing, like, when you hear people talking about they're trying to get rid of the useless eaters and stuff like that, this is, like, kind of shit. So, again, like, it's not just being poor and disabled, it's that not only are you disabled, Canada isn't giving their disabled citizens enough to live. And then they get depressed and they get hopeless, and then Canada's like, well, why don't you just die? So this is a really big problem.
Kill yourself.
Yeah, really fucking big problem.
Yeah.
All right, so we can probably, but I want to drive that in.
About
So
the population of
1.5
Montreal.
million
Our
people
social
they're trying
assistance
to kill
rates
off.
place people with disabilities below the poverty line, approximately 25% below the poverty line. So honestly, this is legislated poverty for people with disabilities. This is the kind of care that's needed.
Dr.
Poverty has
Nahid
policy.
Dasani is a palliative care physician and professor of community and family medicine at the University of Toronto. He gave us a tour of the East Toronto neighborhood where he offers street-based care, often to people with disabilities living in poverty.
Many of the people we care for are dealing with serious illnesses, but often they're very sick because of their social circumstances. There are
Material
significant
conditions.
health outcomes if we don't address those issues and treat those issues.
The result, Dr. Dosani is increasingly discussing MAID, or medical assistance in dying, with his patients. Not necessarily because they want to die, but because they see no way out of the twin miseries of poverty and disability.
When people are living in such a situation where they're structurally placed in poverty, is medical assistance in dying really a choice, or is it coercion?
Under
All right, let's
Canada's
pause
first
for a
medical
second.
assistance
Couple
in
for a
dying
second.
law.
So that doctor's a G, by the way. The thing about it is, like, he doesn't like telling his patients that MAID is an option, but he is basically like, my patients who are so poor and have no options are not given any other options by the Canadian government. And then he says like, probably one of the most base things from this entire video is that MAID is basically coerced onto disabled and poor people.
Do you have that MAID advertisement or no?
The one from that ad? Yeah, I have
Yeah.
that. It's towards the. Did you want to do that? Well, wait.
We'll whatever.
I still want to. I definitely want to watch the rest of this video. It's a good video. It's got a lot of stuff.
2016, a person's death had to be, quote, reasonably foreseeable to be approved. Last year, eligibility was expanded to people who have a, quote, serious and irreversible illness or disability that causes intolerable suffering. Now, people like Joni qualify. On social media, it's a constant conversation.
But almost everyone is like, yeah, just kind of waiting to see, how it is in 6 months. Going to see how it is in 8 months. We'd like to make it to a year, but I don't think we're going to make it to a year.
So
I
sad.
cried a lot at night. I usually stay up a lot at night. I pray a lot.
In Medicine Hat, Alberta, Les Landry is contemplating MAID and leaving behind his beloved service dog, Annie. Les has been growing steadily poorer and more desperate since his career as a truck driver was derailed more than a decade ago.
Disability can happen to anyone at any time. I was doing good. I was making good money, 85 grand a year. I developed a hernia. And then that's when the surgery happened. That's when the blood pressure went out of control. That's when I developed epilepsy and the 3 mini strokes, and things just fell apart. Good girl.
On Alberta's disability program, Les was receiving $1,685 a month, plus benefits for his service
Doesn't mean
dog,
anything, can't-
special diet, and medications.
Does my
Can't live on
blister
that.
pack.
Along with timely donations from strangers on Twitter, he was just scraping by.
That's for a week.
Then in May, he turned 65. In the bureaucratic shuffle, he was transitioned from disability to senior status and actually lost some benefits.
I am no longer a person with a disability. I'm a senior citizen in poverty.
In the past, Les planned ahead, made extra payments on his
So
bills.
I just want to drill that
But
point
he's
home
no
real quick.
longer able to do that and is forced to rely.
So again, more dystopian, is that this guy just said, if you're disabled and turn 65, you actually have less benefits as a senior citizen than you did as you're disabled. So they actually lose benefits when they get older. So now it's not only an attack on poor people, but it's an attack on poor people, disabled people, and elderly people. Like, it's so very, very compacted. Just want to drive that home. And again, this guy, like both of these examples, are representative of the majority of people who are on disability in Canada. They can't survive on it. So it is coercion. Like, I don't know how else to see it. Brad had some good comments in here about this, and I'm sorry about your friend, but it is like people are being compelled to make the decision to do MAID. It's not something they want to do. It's something that they feel like they have to do because they're so hopeless. It's awful.
Even more on donations.
The big picture is, if I didn't plan ahead and make them extra payments, I'd probably be homeless. I cannot live the rest of my life on the goodwill of friends on Twitter. No.
Les, Joni, and many other disabled Canadians who share their stories with Global News say they aren't against medically assisted dying in principle, but they say Canada should have raised disability benefits before expanding access to it.
I have some disabilities, I'm living in pain. They targeted people with disabilities and people with chronic pain. And I said, if you're going to do that, you have a responsibility to also lift the benefits and increase the quality of life for people with disabilities, the people you are targeting.
We should prioritize healthcare and social support that promotes the human rights of all.
Trudeau Lemons is a professor of health law and policy at the University of Toronto. He has been warning the Canadian government for years that the speed and scope of its plans to expand access to assisted dying was a violation of the rights of disabled Canadians.
Out of a misplaced form of compassion, we think that persons with disabilities have a reason to end their life earlier than others.
So I think he makes another good point here about liberalism.
Is discriminatory.
Only about a dozen countries have legalized doctors.
Appreciate it. So, and this was something that like we talked about with the Ted K thing, where liberals kind of like play the victim card and they like try and like thrive off of helping out the marginalized. But this is MAID. That doctor was basically saying MAID is that kind of liberal behavior turned on its head and gotten so absurd and perverse that they're shirking the responsibility to help people and just going straight to the like we should kill you card. And the doctor is saying like you're committing a human rights violation here. Like you're basically like killing your own people without doing everything you can to help them out first. You're taking away their money. You're not giving them enough money to survive. If they get old, they lose their benefits. And like they're helpless, and you're creating conditions where like if they have like a condition like depression, that's enough for them to receive the treatment. So again,
which is even on paper insane.
Yeah,
because they're investing money into this program, which are finite resources, which could easily be produced in the same way, the same fashion, towards healthcare benefits and benefits for the ill and the disabled and the elderly.
Okay.
But we know where our government's priorities are. Clearly, it's out in the open now. They want to fucking kill us all. They want to fucking.
I mean, like I don't.
It's program. It's
hard to not be really cynical about this program when you do just like I only did like about 3-4 hours of research on this. Like I didn't do that much, but it like doesn't take much to see that it's like a really dark program and that everything they do that they say is out of like kindness and like compassion is basically about killing people. Like it's just about trying to like remove the Snow Himbo said, the useless eaters, the people who aren't a tax base anymore. They want to get rid of them, and it's extremely tragic.
Death, Lemon says the few that allow it for patients who aren't terminally ill have stronger protections than Canada against coercion and suffering caused by poverty.
In my view, we're actually failing to implement even some of the most basic safeguards that at least exist in those countries.
Belgium and the Netherlands have had assisted dying since the early 2000s. In both countries, doctors are forbidden from suggesting it to patients. They must also exhaust all other options before approving it.
We're getting rid of this idea that we'll first try the least interventionist measures. I find that actually quite extraordinary that we've forgotten, I think, the seriousness of ending the life of a person as a measure to relieve their suffering.
As Canada has opened up eligibility, the number of cases has shot up. In 2021, more than 10,000 Canadians opted for a medically assisted death. That's a 32% increase from the year before. The numbers have increased faster here.
It was 35% last year. So there's a logarithmic curve of how many more people.
Clearly, this is only going to get
Yeah,
worse.
and I did numbers that were only based on the increase of 35%, but there's no reason to suspect that next year it could be 40%, and the year after that it could be 45%, the year after that it could be 50%. So there's a logarithmic increase in the amount of people who get admitted into this program. But the numbers, I just want to say the numbers again, but it's fucking scary.
Than any other country where it's legal, including the Netherlands and Belgium.
So even though those countries have been practicing medical assisted in dying or euthanasia for 20 years, they are at the rate that we have after only a couple of years.
There is no way of knowing how many of those deaths could have been avoided with the right supports, but we know there are some. Recently in Canada, an Ontario woman suffering from chemical sensitivities reportedly opted for a medically assisted death because she couldn't afford appropriate housing. And in another troubling case, a Veterans Affairs employee suggested it to a veteran who was seeking help for PTSD and a traumatic brain injury.
Have you tried
Often
dying?
I hear arguments, well, this is not impacting that many people. But you know what? If it affects one person, that's way too many people. And we need to do something about that.
The controversy surrounding MAID is not going away. In March, the government plans to expand access yet again to include people with mental illnesses. More support may be coming. A new Canada Disability benefit is before Parliament for the second time. It was dropped last year when a federal election was called.
Sit.
But Joni and Les are skeptical. We already know seniors will not be eligible.
This government has a history on how they treat people with disabilities. 18 to 65, well, that excludes me and anybody in my situation.
So sorry. Please speak up to your member of parliament, to your members of provincial parliament, because people with disabilities don't ask for their disability.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I just can't see me living like this for the rest of my life.
I can't.
I think that's the end of it anyway. But like, that's.
I
know.
Pet lab.
I know that was difficult to watch, but that had a lot of really useful information in it, and so I think it's important.
Absolutely fucking brutal.
Yeah,
and listen, like they're pushing this shit. It's not like this is just something that's happening in the background and like people just happen to be eligible. No, this is literally being promoted by retailers in Canada.
Well, you saw it, like in the video. This is the Veterans Affairs office. Yeah, but like, we can play. Okay, so you got the video. Oh, you pulled up. Okay, because I sent you another article too. That wasn't quite part.
Dying in a hospital is not what's natural. That's not what's soft. In these kind of moments, you need softness. It can take dying to figure out what living is actually like. I spent my life filling my heart with beauty, with nature, with connection. So I choose to fill my final moments with the same. Last breaths are sacred. When I imagine my final days, I see music. I see the ocean. I see cheesecake. Even now, as I seek help to end my life, with all the pain, and in these final moments, there is still so much beauty. You just have to be brave enough to see it. Seeing the rhythms of what's going to keep going after I'm gone. bring a lot of comfort.
Now, this woman's friends.
I sent you the article in the private chat.
I see it.
So, Dr. Nick, while we're pulling it up really quick, Dr. Nick Rivera said, I'm probably conflating some of my info, but Whitney Webb connected MAID to Trudeau and the WEF, or the World Economic Forum. So, I mean, the connection here is the thing that we said about the, useless eaters, they want to just basically get rid of or make it impossible to live for the people who are not a tax base. The wealth inequality has gotten so bad in the Western nations that they're now resorting to these really absurd and perverse ways of solving the inequality crisis by killing the people that they've created this inequality for. So anyway, to get back to the ad that we were just watching, and I think that ad was basically an ad for the program, wasn't it?
That's an ad to just, hey, you want to kill
we do this. Yeah,
we do this.
The lady who was on that ad that you just saw, she didn't want to die. So the woman featured in a glamorous pro-euthanasia commercial for a Canadian clothing retailer only opted for assisted suicide after her years-long attempts to secure proper health care failed, friends have revealed. So sad. Jennifer Hatch, 37, was the central figure of All Is Beauty, a 3-minute film produced by Simons that celebrated Hatch's last days before seeking medically assisted death. Last week, CTV confirmed that Hatch was the same woman who had spoken to them in June about her failed attempts to find proper treatment for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a rare and painful condition in which patients suffer from excessively fragile skin and connective tissues. I feel like I'm falling through the cracks, so I'm not able to access health care, and then I'm able to access death care, and that's what led me to look into MAID, Hatch told CTV in June under a pseudonym. Like more than 1 million British Columbians, Hatch was left without primary care after her family doctors moved away. And so after her Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis 10 years ago, Hatch's treatment had largely considered a chaotic and ineffective stream of specialist appointments, none of which had any background on her condition. So, I don't know. We can. That's probably.
Yeah. You want to just wrap it up there?
Yeah, I mean, the point there is that even they're trying to sell this product, trying to sell this thing, and even the person they have starring it, you would think they would try and find somebody who actually had a compassionate reason to go through the program. And even the person who's starring in this didn't have a compassionate reason. She just couldn't get the help that she needed.
You could convince someone for the physical reasons for this, but not for the mental. Not at all. I don't know who opens up that bill. I don't know what kind of person.
Dude, I don't know how you sleep at night. But
I really don't.
So to kind of wrap up this segment, and again, I know it was tough, but it's a really important topic, and it hits me viscerally. It's a really, really difficult for me. But I want to talk about kind of the scale of this. So 13,500 estimated for 2022. So we haven't gotten 2023, so we won't get those for another, until next year sometime. 2021 was about 10,000. Okay, so the rate of growth has been logarithmic, as I said, but let's just say it's growing at a rate of 35,000 a year, and let's not even consider that, kids are born every year. So all we're considering is just the rate of growth in this program every year, nothing else. So this is going to happen sooner than I'm estimating. Okay, so by 2029, 110,322 people will be killed through the MAID program per year. Okay, and as we saw earlier in this segment, 41% of people with mental health conditions are in poverty. So, or poor and disabled. Okay, so if we extrapolate that, it's about 45,200 people a year are going to die in this program in Canada just for being poor and disabled. Okay, 45,000 a year by 2029.
It's a crazy number. What's the population in Canada?
I don't know exactly, but they said what 1.5 million people were under the poverty line. So if they're killing about 50,000 a year by the time 2030 rolls around, was that 20? That's 30 years. Kill 1.5 million people in less than 30 years. But that's crazy. So,
absolutely bomb.
Really scary program, and as was kind of mentioned in that video, other countries do it And even that doctor said that there's countries that have been doing this program for over 20 years and don't have the same numbers that Canada has in 3 or 4. Okay, so just unprecedented rates of growth in Canada. It's not just like, oh, it's 13,000 people, not a big deal, that's kind of negligible. No. This is like the rate of growth is a concern here. The rate of growth is concerning. There's going to be a lot of people getting murdered in this program. So I think I'll wrap it up with that. Thanks for listening to that. It's an important subject, but.